You blinked. That's what it feels like. You blinked and suddenly 10 years disappeared. And the strangest part isn't that time passed. It's that it passed without your permission, without warning. One moment you were young and everything felt infinite. The next moment you're standing in your kitchen wondering where the hell everything went. This isn't nostalgia. The scariest part? It's speeding up. Right now, as you listen to this, time is compressing faster than it ever has before. And you can feel it. That quiet panic in your chest when you realize another year just ended. That strange heaviness when you look at old photos and can't believe how recent they feel. That's not your imagination. That's your brain adapting to survival. And it's about to get faster. Here's what nobody tells you about time. It doesn't exist the way you think it does. Outside your head, time is constant. Seconds tick. Hours pass. The planet rotates at the same speed it always has. But inside your skull, time is an illusion your brain constructs moment by moment. And that construction changes based on one simple biological factor: novelty. When you're a child, everything is new. The first time you taste ice cream, the first time you ride a bike, the first time you feel heartbreak. Your brain is recording constantly because novelty signals importance. The hippocampus lights up. The prefrontal cortex pays attention. Memory formation goes into overdrive. Each new experience gets encoded with detail, with texture, with emotional weight. So when you look back at childhood, it feels long, dense, full, because your brain saved everything. But as you age, something shifts. Novelty decreases. You've tasted most foods. You've seen most places. You've felt most emotions. Your brain stops paying attention the way it used to. Not because you're broken, because you're efficient. The amygdala isn't scanning for threats in familiar environments. The hippocampus isn't encoding details you've already stored 1,000 times. Your neural networks recognize patterns and say, "We know this. We can autopilot." This is why time accelerates. When you're not encoding new memories, your brain compresses experience. Days blur together because they're similar. Weeks blend because nothing stands out. Years collapse because the distinctiveness that once stretched time has disappeared. You're not losing time. You're losing the markers that made time feel real. Research shows that memory density directly correlates with perceived duration. When you remember more from a period, that period feels longer in retrospect. When you remember less, it feels shorter. Think about the last 5 years. Now think about age 5 to 10. Which feels longer? Most people say childhood. Not because it was actually longer, because they remember more from it. Your brain is literally trading present awareness for future efficiency. Every time it recognizes a pattern, it saves energy by not fully processing the moment. Every time it automates a behavior, it frees up cognitive resources for potential threats. This worked beautifully for survival, but it destroys your perception of time. Because when you're not present, the moment doesn't get saved. And when the moment doesn't get saved, looking back feels empty. The proportional theory explains this mathematically. When you're 10 years old, 1 year represents 10% of your entire life. That's significant. Your brain treats it as significant. But when you're 50, 1 year is only 2% of your life. Proportionally smaller, less significant. Your neural networks allocate less attention to it. So it speeds past. But there's something deeper happening. Something most neuroscience doesn't talk about. Your nervous system adapts to emotional load. When you're young, emotions hit with full force because you haven't developed regulatory mechanisms. Joy feels explosive. Pain feels unbearable. Everything matters intensely. But as you age, your prefrontal cortex strengthens. Emotional regulation improves. You become stable, calm, less reactive, which sounds healthy. And it is. Except that emotional intensity is what creates vivid memories. When you stop feeling things as deeply, you stop remembering them as clearly. And when you stop remembering clearly, time compresses. This is the biological truth nobody wants to hear. Growing up means growing numb. Not completely, not dramatically, just enough that the edges soften, just enough that the days blend, just enough that time starts to slip. Maybe you've noticed something strange lately. Holidays arrive faster than they used to. Wasn't it just New Year's? But now it's summer. Wasn't it just summer? But now the year is ending. This isn't your imagination playing tricks. This is your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. Compress repetition. If you drive the same route to work every day, your brain stops encoding that drive. You arrive and can't remember the journey. Not because you weren't there, because your neural networks categorized it as known and saved processing power. This happens with everything. Morning routines, weekends, conversations, relationships. When life becomes predictable, your brain treats it like background noise. And background noise doesn't get remembered. And what doesn't get remembered doesn't stretch time. Maybe you've also noticed that the older you get, the harder it is to recall what you did last week or last month. The memories exist somewhere, but they're not accessible, not distinct. They're stored in clusters marked similar to previous experience. Your hippocampus isn't failing, it's optimizing. It's saying, we've seen this pattern before. We don't need to save every instance. If you work the same job year after year, your brain compresses those years into a single template. If you have the same social circle, the same hobbies, the same routines, your brain says, this is one long continuous experience. And continuous experiences don't have breaks, don't have chapters. They just flow, uninterrupted, unnoticed, until you look back and realize 5 years passed and you remember almost nothing. Maybe you feel a quiet panic sometimes, a panic that has no clear source. It's not about one specific thing. It's about everything. About realizing that time is moving faster than you can keep up with. That you're aging in ways you didn't expect. That the person you were 10 years ago feels both familiar and impossibly distant. This panic isn't irrational. It's your consciousness recognizing a biological reality. You are living in fast forward, and you don't know how to slow down. The invisible luggage you carry is this: the realization that most of your life is already behind you, that the majority of your memories have already been formed, that the person you're becoming is less a creation and more a continuation. And continuation doesn't feel as alive as creation did. Maybe you've tried to fix this. You've planned trips. You've started hobbies. You've told yourself this year will be different. But then the year ends and it feels just as fast, just as empty. Because you're fighting biology with willpower. And willpower always loses to neural efficiency. If you're someone who looks at photos from 5 years ago and feels shocked by how recent they seem, you're not alone. That shock is your brain confronting its own compression algorithm. The photos prove time passed, but your internal experience says it didn't. And that dissonance creates a strange kind of grief. Grief for time you technically lived but don't actually remember living. Maybe you feel guilty about this. Like you wasted something. Like you should have been more present. Like you should have appreciated things more. But guilt is a trap. Because guilt assumes you had control. And you didn't. Your brain was doing what it evolved to do. It was surviving. It was adapting. It was trying to keep you safe in a world that requires efficiency. The silent exhaustion of time speeding up is realizing you can't get it back. That every moment you're not fully present is a moment that will compress into nothingness when you look back. That the days you're living right now will one day feel like they never happened. And knowing this doesn't make it easier. It makes it heavier. Maybe you've noticed relationships feel different too. Old friends you used to see constantly now exist in yearly catch-ups. Family members you were close to feel distant. Not because love disappeared, because time diluted it. Because repetition made connection feel less urgent. Your brain says, we'll always have time. But the biological truth is you won't. Time is accelerating, and connection requires presence. And presence is the first thing your brain sacrifices for efficiency. If you're reading this and feeling seen, That's because this isn't rare. This is the human condition in adulthood. Everyone is moving through life faster than they want to. Everyone is losing track of time. Everyone is wondering where it all went. The only difference is some people talk about it and some people bury it under business. The paradox is that the faster time moves, the less you feel like yourself. Because identity requires memory, and memory requires attention, and attention requires novelty. So when everything becomes routine, your sense of self starts to blur. You become a collection of habits rather than a conscious being. You start saying things like, "I don't even know who I am anymore." And it's not existential crisis. It's biological consequence. Maybe the hardest part is realizing that nobody warned you. Nobody said that growing up meant losing your grip on time. That adulthood would feel like falling through your own life. That the trade-off for stability is speed. You thought getting older meant getting wiser. And maybe it does. But wisdom doesn't slow time down. If anything, it makes it worse. Because now you know what you're losing. And knowing makes the loss more painful. Here's the reframing nobody talks about. Time speeding up is not the problem. The problem is that you're trying to stop it. You're fighting a biological mechanism that has kept humans alive for millions of years. Your brain speeds up time to protect you, to prevent overwhelm, to allow focus on what actually matters. Trying to slow it down by force doesn't work. It just creates resistance. And resistance creates suffering. The twist is this. Time doesn't need to feel long to be meaningful. You've been taught that duration equals value, that the longer something lasts, the more it matters. But that's a lie. Some of the most important moments of your life lasted seconds. A glance, a sentence, a decision. They didn't stretch. They intensified. And intensity is what your brain actually remembers. The paradox is that trying to slow down time makes it speed up faster. When you're constantly thinking about how fast things are moving, you're not actually present. You're observing. You're narrating. You're creating meta-awareness. And meta-awareness pulls you out of experience. So you end up living beside your life instead of inside it. And when you live beside your life, your brain doesn't encode it. And when it doesn't encode it, time compresses even more. The real issue isn't that time is moving fast. It's that you're not moving with it. You're trying to hold on to a version of time that doesn't exist anymore. You're trying to recreate the density of childhood in an adult brain. But childhood density came from ignorance, from not knowing what was coming, from being forced into novelty because you had no choice. Adulthood gives you choice, and choice creates routine, and routine creates compression. The biological truth is that your brain speeds up time because you're safe. When you were young, nothing was certain. Every day brought potential danger. Your nervous system stayed alert, encoding, recording, preparing. But as you age, you build stability, predictability, safety. And safety tells your brain it can relax. It can stop scanning. It can autopilot. So time speeds up not because you're losing something, but because you've gained something. Security. The hidden gift of time acceleration is this. It means you're no longer in survival mode. You're in maintenance mode. And maintenance mode is a privilege. Most of human history was spent in constant survival. No one had the luxury of wondering where time went because they were too busy trying to survive it. You get to wonder because you're safe. And that's not something to fix. That's something to recognize. The reason time feels empty isn't because nothing is happening. It's because you've stopped paying attention to what is happening. You've automated your awareness. You've outsourced your presence to habit. And habit doesn't require consciousness. So you float through days without landing, without grounding, without actually feeling the texture of your own life. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't want time to slow down. You want to feel alive again. Those are not the same thing. Time slowing down would mean going back to uncertainty, back to chaos, back to constant threat. That's not what you're craving. You're craving intensity, meaning, connection, the feeling that your existence matters in a tangible way. And intensity doesn't come from duration. It comes from attention. The shift happens when you stop trying to stretch time and start trying to deepen it. Deep time isn't about making moments last longer. It's about making moments matter more. It's about encoding experience with intention instead of letting your brain decide what's worth remembering. Because your brain will always choose efficiency over presence. Always, unless you intervene. The reframe is this: time speeding up is not a bug. It's a feature. It's your brain saying, you're safe enough to stop recording everything. The question is whether you want to accept that safety or whether you want to create intentional moments of aliveness that break through the compression. Most people never ask that question. They just panic. And panic doesn't create presence. It creates more compression. The secret is that you can have both. You can have stability and intensity, safety and aliveness, routine and novelty. But you can't have them passively. You can't wait for life to surprise you. Because adulthood doesn't work that way. Surprises decrease. Patterns increase. Your brain adapts. So if you want time to feel different, you have to actively disrupt the patterns your brain has learned to compress. This is where most people give up. They think disruption means drastic change, quitting jobs, ending relationships, moving across the world. But disruption doesn't require drama. It requires attention. It requires doing the same things differently. It requires noticing what you've stopped noticing. It requires turning autopilot off long enough to encode something new. The biological mechanism is simple. New information gets prioritized. Repeated information gets ignored. So if you want your brain to slow down its compression, you have to feed it novelty. Not giant novelty, micro-novelty. Taking a different route home. Eating in silence. Listening without planning your response. Small breaks in pattern that force your hippocampus to pay attention again. The paradox is that the solution feels too simple to work. Your brain wants a complex fix because complex problems deserve complex solutions. But time acceleration isn't complex. It's mechanical. Your brain compresses what it recognizes. So give it something it doesn't recognize. And watch how quickly time starts to stretch again. So what do you actually do? How do you intervene in a biological process that's been running your whole life? The answer is not what you think. It's not about productivity. It's not about achieving more or experiencing more or doing more. It's about encoding more. And encoding happens through a specific mechanism. Attention. First mechanism. Sensory immersion. Your brain compresses experience when it's processed conceptually. When you think about things instead of sensing them. So the way to break compression is to drop into your senses deliberately. Not meditation. Not mindfulness in the spiritual sense. Just raw sensory data. What do you feel right now? Not emotionally. Physically. The temperature on your skin. The pressure of your body against the chair. The sound in the room. Your brain cannot compress sensory information the same way it compresses conceptual information. So when you anchor in sensation, time stretches. Not forever. Just enough to create a memory. Do this daily, even for 60 seconds. Before you get out of bed, before you start your routine, drop into your body. Feel your breath. Feel your heartbeat. Feel the weight of the blanket. Your brain will resist because it wants to start planning. Let it resist. Keep feeling. This is not relaxation. This is encoding. You're creating a distinct memory marker that will make today feel different from yesterday when you look back. Second mechanism. Micro-adventures. Novelty doesn't require travel. It requires disruption. Change one small thing about your routine every week. Eat breakfast in a different room. Walk a different path. Listen to music you've never heard. Your brain doesn't need massive change to pay attention. It just needs difference. And difference resets the compression algorithm. This is why vacations feel long. Not because they last long, but because every day is different. Every day requires attention. You can create that same effect without leaving your house. You just have to be intentional. Third mechanism. Conversational depth. Most conversations are pattern recognition. Your brain predicts what someone will say before they say it. So it tunes out. It compresses the interaction into similar to previous interaction. The way to break this is to ask questions you don't know the answer to. Real questions. Not small talk. Not politeness. Questions that force both you and the other person to think. Your brain cannot compress unpredictability. So when a conversation surprises you, it gets encoded. And when it gets encoded, time stretches. Fourth mechanism. Scheduled discomfort. Comfort creates compression. When everything feels safe, your brain stops recording. So introduce small discomforts regularly. Not pain. Not trauma. Just mild challenge. Try something you're bad at. Have a conversation you've been avoiding. Sit in silence longer than feels natural. Discomfort forces presence because your nervous system cannot autopilot through uncertainty. And presence creates memory. And memory creates the feeling that time existed. Fifth mechanism. Memory reflection. Once a week, write down 3 specific things you remember from the past 7 days. Not what you did, what you felt, what you noticed, what surprised you. This forces your brain to encode retroactively. It tells your hippocampus, this mattered. Save this. And the more you do this, the more your brain starts encoding in real time because it knows you'll be checking later. This is not journaling for catharsis. This is memory training. You're teaching your brain that details matter. Sixth mechanism. Presence anchors. Choose one daily activity and commit to doing it without distraction. Eating, walking, showering, whatever. No phone, no thinking, just the activity. Your brain will fight this. It will say this is boring. It will try to wander. Let it try. Keep coming back. This is how you rebuild the neural pathway between attention and experience. Right now, that pathway is weak because you've been autopiloting for years. Strengthening it takes repetition. But once it's strong, presence becomes easier. And presence is the only thing that slows time down. The secret most people miss is this. You don't need to change your life. You need to change your awareness of your life. The moments are already there. The texture is already there. You're just not encoding it. So your brain compresses it. And compressed time feels empty. But the emptiness isn't real. It's perceptual, which means it's reversible. Here's the hack. Your brain encodes in layers. Surface layer is conceptual. Middle layer is emotional. Deep layer is sensory. Most people live in the surface layer. Thoughts about life, ideas about experience, narratives about meaning. That's why time compresses. Because surface layer information is repetitive. But deep layer information is always unique. No 2 sensations are identical. No 2 breaths feel the same. So when you drop into sensation, you access a layer your brain cannot compress. And that creates stretch. Another thing. Stop waiting for life to feel different. It won't. Not on its own. Your brain is wired for efficiency now. It's not going back to childhood encoding without intervention. So you have to decide. Do you want time to keep speeding up? Or do you want to actively slow it down? Because both require effort. One requires the effort of unconsciousness. The other requires the effort of presence. Choose consciously. The biological reality is that time will keep accelerating unless you intervene. Your brain will keep compressing unless you feed it novelty. Your memories will keep fading unless you encode intentionally. This is not a problem to solve. It's a system to understand. And once you understand it, you can work with it instead of against it. The most important thing is this. Don't try to slow down all of time. That's impossible and exhausting. Instead, create islands of presence. Moments where you're fully there. Moments that get encoded deeply. Those moments will stretch in memory. They'll become the landmarks that make years feel real instead of empty. You don't need every day to be memorable. You just need enough distinct moments that looking back doesn't feel like staring into fog. Time doesn't slow down. That's the truth nobody wants to hear. It keeps accelerating. Every year faster than the last. Every decade more compressed. This is not a flaw. This is biology. This is your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. and fighting it only makes it worse. But here's the quiet miracle. You don't need to slow down time to feel alive. You just need to show up for the moments you're already living. You need to stop floating through your days waiting for something to grab your attention. You need to become the thing that grabs your attention. Because presence is not passive. It's active. It's a choice you make every moment. And every moment you choose it, you create a memory that will make looking back feel less empty. The years will keep passing. Faster and faster. That's inevitable. But the emptiness isn't. The feeling that life is slipping through your fingers isn't permanent. It's just what happens when you stop encoding. When you stop noticing. When you let your brain compress everything into sameness. You are not running out of time. You are running out of attention. And attention is renewable. Every single moment is an opportunity to come back. To drop in. To feel what's actually happening instead of thinking about what should be happening. That's the work. Not big dramatic change. Just small intentional presence. Over and over. Until it becomes natural again. The version of you that feels time slipping away is the same version that can slow it down. Not by force. Not by fighting. But by simply being here. Fully. Completely. Without resistance. Because time speeds up when you're absent. And it stretches when you're present. That's the mechanism. That's the truth. So maybe you don't need to change your life. Maybe you just need to notice it. Maybe you just need to feel it. Maybe you just need to stop running long enough to realize you were always here. Time was always passing. You were just watching it instead of living it. And the moment you start living it again, everything shifts. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just enough that when you look back, you remember. You remember what it felt like. You remember what mattered. You remember that you were there. That you existed. That your life wasn't just a blur of compressed time. It was a collection of moments. And those moments were yours. And they always will be. The clock keeps ticking. The years keep moving. But you don't have to move with them unconsciously. You can be here. Right now. Feeling this. Noticing this. Encoding this. And when you do, time doesn't disappear. It deepens. And depth is what you were searching for all along. You are not too late. You are not behind. You are exactly where you are. And where you are is alive. Breathing. Feeling. Here. That's enough. That's everything. That's the moment you thought you lost. It was never gone. You were just looking somewhere else. Come back. Not tomorrow. Not after this video. Right now. Feel your breath. Feel your body. Feel the aliveness underneath the thoughts. That's time. That's presence. That's what makes everything real. And when you do this enough, something strange happens. The panic fades. The rushing stops. The years still pass quickly, but they don't feel empty anymore. They feel lived. And lived time is the only time that matters. You were always here. You just forgot to notice. Now you remember. And remembering changes everything.